it's Laura Giles, your host of Modern Animism Radio. Thanks for being here. As you know, modern animism is a holistic spiritual path that is a little bit about beliefs, but it's more about how we walk in the world. It's a holistic spiritual path that's a balance of rational and mystical, and those paths cross most easily in myth and fairy tale. You hear me say that a lot. Today I'm going to share some of the hidden things that you might have missed in fairy tales and myth to help open your eyes to that. Perhaps it can deepen your understanding and awareness of animism and the importance of story. But first, let me give gratitude to the elements and ancestors without whom we would not be here. Acknowledge and thank the earth that represents the material world, our bodies, our stability, our survival. I thank you for supporting us and helping us to see the beauty through our senses. I acknowledge and thank the air for giving us oxygen to breathe, ideas, and the means to communicate them so that we can connect. I thank you for helping us to be impartial, non-judgmental, and mindful. I thank and acknowledge fire for power, life, warmth, and reminding us of the need to be responsible. I thank you for the desire to create, connect, live, and participate in the beauty that is life. I acknowledge and thank water for life, purification, and the reminder to be flexible, flow, and feel. I acknowledge and thank the ancestors from all the realms for all that you do that is seen and unseen. You are a reminder to do good deeds and share love. I also want to thank our listeners for tuning in. It's not been a meteoric rise to the top, but we do gain new listeners all the time, and we've been trying out new things on all platforms. Some are hits and some are misses. So I appreciate those of you who have been here since we launched, as well as those who are new to the show and just pop in now and then. I just checked the stats, and we have listeners in 24 countries. Isn't that cool? I couldn't be more thrilled about that. So keep sharing it and keep tuning in. That definitely helps. You can also help by donating. There's a button on our website at www.pansociety.net, or you can do that from the Podbean app. So we have a new Modern Animism introductory course that's free. It's online on our private Facebook group. All you have to do to take it is to have a Facebook account, log in, find the group. It's called Pan Society, so you can't miss it. Join and go to the units section. It's easy peasy. If you're looking for a way to have a more structured approach to your learning about animism, there you go. Done. Okay, so we're talking about everyday symbols in myths and fairy tales from around the world. So some of you may not have heard of this, but this will help to expand your awareness, so I'm going to give you a little synopsis of the story first. So the first one probably needs no introduction, but because it's Cinderella, and we've all heard of Cinderella, right? Cinders are ashes, and Cinderella was a girl who lost her mother. Her father loved his daughter and later remarried a cruel woman who had 2 daughters, and they treated her like a servant. They made her cook and clean and care for them, and they dressed her in rags. And one of her duties was cleaning the fireplaces, and she got covered in ashes, and so they named her Cinderella. Now, for most of us, that's kind of the end of the story. Cinderella's just a name she was given because she was dirty. But that's actually not all. Cinders, or ashes, are a symbol for rebirth. It's like a phoenix. When someone dies and is cremated, they're bones and ashes, and these ashes go into the ground, where they nourish the soil and the things that are in the soil until something else is born from it. So that's how it's a symbol for rebirth. And many rites of passages for boys involve the use of ashes. They either cover their whole bodies in ashes, or they use a little bit, like on their forehead or their face or something like that, to symbolize the death of their boyhood and their transition into manhood. So the beloved and pampered daughter died basically when the stepmother came into her life, because she had a new identity now as the kind of slave girl. And then she was later reborn as a princess. So the name is a foreshadowing of an event. And you see what I'm saying? You know, do you think about it a little bit differently now? Do you see ashes in a different context now? That's what I mean about symbolism and in myths and stories. So Cinderella has a common fairy tale motif, and that is that she's an orphan. First her mother dies, and then her father dies, leaving her with the wicked stepmother. And this orphaning is one of the steps to growth. Joseph Campbell uses it in his hero adventure. And the reason why this speaks to us is because it's really a part of everybody's life, and we see it over and over and over again, so we can identify with it. We all enter into life in innocence. We're the divine child, and then something happens to all of us which scars us. And it's this wounding that starts us on the path to growth. And without it, we remain in a bubble that's not really in this world. Unfortunately, some of us stop the journey there. We let the wound consume us. It becomes a reason for not moving forward, our excuse even. And then we become professional victims. If we stop here, our life is already over before we've even begun. And this wound isn't meant to stop us, but to help us grow towards being our own people. It's there to strengthen us. And if we don't have obstacles to overcome, we're not going to know who we are, what we believe in, or what we're capable of. That's why it's called the hero's adventure. It's not called the dude next door adventure, because that's what it takes to become that hero. That's what it takes to become fully you, fully me, fully everybody. So how often do we tell our tales of woe, talking about who did what to us and how we were hurt, instead of standing in our own power and taking responsibility? I know Cinderella is just a story, but she's an example of how to be sweet and untainted by the ugliness that goes on around us. The older myths don't tend to be as moralistic as the newer ones, but they are more raw and hit you straight up. And I don't tend to get moralistic because that's just not me. But I do think it's worthwhile to see examples of how to live in stories. Not because of the morals, but because of your own values. There's another plot point that is symbolic and not moralistic that you might have missed, though. And when Cinderella has a tough task to accomplish, in the original stories, she calls out to nature and the spirit world. In the Disney version, which is probably the one most people are familiar with, Cinderella is helped by her fairy godmother, the candelabra, the teapot, and the teacup. I think that's right, yeah. I think it's the oldest versions where she's helped by the tree, which is the tree of life, actually. The birds, who are message carriers to the other world, and then the spirit of her dead mother. So these all represent the idea of having commerce with the other world. And even though we inhabit other realms, we say that everything is connected. That even applies to the spirit world. We have helpers there. All we have to do is reach out, ask, and accept the help when it shows up. I hope everyone is doing that every single day at your ancestor altar, because the help is there. You know, why not use it? Now, without this understanding of symbol, this could just look like a patriarchal, disempowering story for women to just sit around and wait to be rescued by rich, handsome, powerful men. So to avoid giving that legacy to our children, we probably have to give them the whole story, complete with symbolism, complete with the brutality. And this probably means that we need to go back to the older stories where the stepsister cuts off her toes and shoves her bloody feet in the shoes, and not the sanitized one with singing and the cartoons and, you know, all of that. And I hope that gets you started thinking about myths and stories a little differently. I know that I'm pointing out the symbolism that you might have missed, maybe in some cases because the versions you're looking at have been sanitized. But the trick to really digesting magic that lies within them is to actually disengage your rational mind and let the symbols speak to you through your whole senses, so your body, mind, emotions, and spirit. You might not know why something clicks or have the words to speak what you perceive, but that's kind of the point. Myth, legend, story, magic, music, dance, poetry, any form of art, really, are gateways to the unconscious that can bypass logic and go straight to the heart. They're heart openers. It helps to understand so that you don't lose what's precious about a thing, but you don't have to be transformed by it. For example, have you ever seen any Michelangelo sculpture? Now, he was an amazing and famous architect and painter, but his sculpture, oh my God, is absolutely amazing. It's the first and only time that I've ever been stopped in my tracks with my mouth hanging open and unable to move. I'm totally serious. And it was all due to a cold piece of stone. It had no movement, No warmth, no blood, no sound. And yet it was more alive and beautiful. It had more emotion than anything I've ever seen or heard before. And it's hard to say that about a piece of stone, but I can't tell you how much it moved me because there's simply no adequate words. And that's what I mean about myth, legend, and stories. That's where they can take you. So let's look at the story of Medusa. This one comes from ancient Greek mythology. Medusa was one of the Gorgons. There were three monstrous sisters, but Medusa was different in that she was the only one that was mortal of the three, and she was also quite beautiful. So beautiful, in fact, that she attracted the attention of the sea god Poseidon, who was also her uncle. I think he was her uncle. In true Greek god form, there was no seduction or courtship. He handled his lust by just raping her. Unfortunately, not only did he rape her, but he did it in Athena's temple, where Medusa was serving as a priestess. Now, this is sacred ground. You don't violate a temple like that. So not only do you not rape somebody in a temple, but you don't rape a temple priestess, because she's a servant of that goddess, and she has given her virginity to that goddess. So it's like Athena was being violated. But what does Athena do? She responds by turning Medusa's hair into snakes and making it so that anyone who looked at her was turned into stone. And Medusa was eventually killed by Perseus, who cut off her head. And Medusa was quote-unquote pregnant. Now, I say quote-unquote because she didn't have a baby. When Perseus cut off her head and the blood is gushing from her body, she gave birth to twins, the winged horse Pegasus and the giant Chrysaor. And Perseus captured Pegasus and used him in his other adventures. So that's kind of that insult to injury. He uses her baby after killing her. Meanwhile, Medusa's severed head was also used as a weapon against Perseus's enemies before Perseus returned the head to Athena, who then used it on her own shield. Now, most people see Athena's act as one of punishment for defiling the temple. So she's punishing the victim of the rape. In the writings of the day, the rape was mentioned kind of matter-of-factly. And, if you read Greek mythology, you know that it just happened so often, that you just get the sense that it was commonplace for powerful men to rape women in Greece. Still, Medusa could have been given any features when she was turned into a monster, but Athena gave her snake hair. So that's the symbol I want to kind of hone in on. Snakes in ancient Greece were seen as protectors. They are all over the healing hospitals of Asclepius. The Asclepians. They were all over the floors. And they're also symbols for the underworld, healing. The snakes brought the healing dreams, and the Asclepia. They were symbols of joy, bringers of good luck, and symbols of wisdom. In cultures from around the world, snakes are symbols of birth, death, and rebirth. And in some stories from ancient Greece, snakes, sometimes serpents and dragons, are kind of interchangeable or variations of the same thing, are evil enemies to be vanquished. And Medusa's name means guardian or protector. So she's got the snake name. Now, as I said, Athena was a virgin goddess. I think I said that. And Medusa was a maid, too, when she was defiled. And I could be wrong about this, but I think that the snakes were given to her to protect her from this happening again, and maybe to wreak revenge on anybody who tried it. So, she was really beautiful. Men stared at her. They desired her. And I think that the powers to turn men into stone wasn't a punishment, but a way to help Medusa. So do you put someone's head on your shield if you feel wronged by them? I think you put the head on your shield to honor them and then use that to protect yourself. And do you see symbols of monsters everywhere? Not usually. There's gargoyles on churches and stuff, but those are there to protect them too. So usually we see statues of heroes everywhere, and yet Medusa's statue was commonly found in ancient Greece. So I don't think she was the bad guy. I don't know how that got distorted, but I don't think that was the case. However, it could be that Athena did want to subdue her. Medusa was wild and beautiful and natural. And ancient Greece was patriarchal and didn't like women getting out of hand, so her wildness was out of line. Athena did give Perseus the shield to help him in his quest to kill Medusa. Athena also had a track record of falling in line with male patriarchy, so it could be that simple. Or it could be that later interpretations of Athena distorted her to be more in line with patriarchal politics of the day. So when you're reading these things, don't rush to judgment yet. You need data. And there's more to this story. Medusa's head is used as a symbol to mark women's shelters in ancient Greece. So, it's like to say, hey, this is a safe haven for battered women. So it could also be that the stories were written by men for a patriarchal society and things had to be hidden. Like codes were hidden in spiritual songs sung by slaves. They're singing these songs saying, hey, safe passage, hey, or hey, keep going, keep your head up, don't lose faith. And they're singing them out in the open and they sound like something else. So it could be that that was the case with Medusa. It was a symbol for women that didn't register with the men, and that's how that happened. I don't know. So the question is it a story of female repression or is it a hero story? And if it's Perseus' story, then of course it's the hero story. If it's Medusa's story, I don't know. Is she repressed or is she the victim? Medusa's definitely not evil. She was minding her own business, tending the goddess when she was raped. And Perseus was sent to kill her by a king who wants him out of the way. So he was kind of a victim too. Because, there was a long line of other trophy hunters trying to get Medusa's head, and they all perished. So it was a suicide mission that Perseus was on until he was helped by the gods. If he had not got the help of the gods, it would have turned out differently, I'm sure. So when he got there, again, Medusa was just minding her own business when someone comes to kill her. So how does she get to be the bad guy? It's a good question, I think. So it's not always easy to unravel the meaning of stories or symbols, especially if you don't see them as symbols. But perhaps one of the things that makes them so interesting and timeless is that, just the mystery of it all. You definitely have to weed through the politics and agendas to see the symbols. But the symbols always tell the truth. Always. And if you become mindful of symbols, you'll start to see them everywhere, in dreams and in life. Metaphor is a powerful teacher. We don't have such literal lives. We're creative beings. The whole world is a metaphor, and story is where these symbols and metaphors live. There are ways to grow without having to have those experiences yourself. So it's kind of a way of connecting into that web. There's lots of great stories, both modern and ancient, that can illuminate nature, humanity, and even your soul. And I hope that this sparks an interest in stories, and maybe you'll go back and reread your old favorites to feel what you feel and perhaps see new things. For me, they do make life more holistic because it's really not so one-dimensional. It becomes timeless in a way because that space of suspension, of otherworldliness where these stories take place, that there's no time there. So I hope that gets you thinking. That's all for this week, but there are some other podcasts and videos where we talk about stories, and if you like this one and haven't checked those out yet, take a look at the archives. You'll see them there. Feel free to reach out with your comments as well. We look at every single one and would love your feedback. And if you don't want to post something publicly, you can always email me on the down low. I'm at laura@pansociety.net. If you want to support us and our mission here, you can send your donations online at our website at pansociety.net. And until the next time, see you next week, and thanks for tuning in. Ciao!